Oh, right, well, I suppose I should double check that the guitar fits in here. I mean, I've ordered 3 of these, so bloody hope it fits. So last time we saw these guitars, I was buffing the lacquer and the finish on it. Since then, I kind of got a bit excited and I screwed on the scratch plates. You didn't miss much. It's literally 5 screws which go into the threaded inserts which I'd already put in there, and it now looks like this, which is kind of cool. I like it. I did put a post on Instagram saying that at the moment, because the hardware for each of these guitars, to get everything set up and measured and to make sure everything was going to work together, what I did was buy 1 set of everything as opposed to 3, because even at trade prices and shopping around and finding the cheapest supplier for everything, there's over £350-ish in hardware and things on this guitar, even though it's a single pickup, simple wrap around tailpiece. I'm using quite expensive tuners. The tailpiece itself is not cheap. Pickups are never cheap. Electronics always add up, and as you've probably seen on my other guitars, I always use Dunlop flush mount strap locks, which on their own for a pair of those is over 20 quid. So I did ask which of the 3 guitars I should build up first to test everything. I'm sure you'll agree with the results if you weren't party to that small conversation. I love this one. This one looks absolutely brilliant. It's kind of winning on many levels. It's got that vintage 50s sunburst feel to it, but with the more modern bevel shape. So the main jobs that need to be done on this before assembly, in fact about the only thing that needs to be done on this before I start assembling it, is making a nut and just cleaning and oiling the fretboard. What I'll also do with the fretboards, because I masked up the front face, there was a small amount of overspray that got in around the edges of the frets, but it also tends to leave quite a crisp, sharp edge up the edges of the fretboard. And as much as I know some people like a very nice crisp edge on their fretboards, these are meant to kind of be a bit more vintage feel as well as being modern. But what I need to do is roll the edges of the fretboards, so I'll do that with a razor blade, which I did get myself one out just for this job, but obviously I've moved things since then, just not the things I should have moved. So essentially you get a razor blade and just gently scrape the hard edge away, and you can either really heavily roll it, or you can just clean off the edge, or you can do anything in between. I'm going to find what's comfortable and I'll do that. But that's an incredibly boring job, which I might just kind of add into one of the little montages of working on the guitars. Nobody wants to see that in detail, do they? The other thing I need to do is make a nut. Now, I've always got a couple of bags of little bone nut blanks because I use them for lots of things. I'm going to use bone on these rather than aluminium or brass, which I have used in the past on other guitars. But these blanks are too thick and too wide. So, as with so many things that I've done with this guitar, I got a bit carried away last night. And so in true Blue Peter fashion, here's one I made earlier. That's been rough fitted and kind of shaped to match the guitar. I haven't slotted it yet. That's the next job on this. So this part, the fretboard rolling and making the nut, I will probably do for all three guitars whilst I'm assembling this, or after I've assembled this. Now, part way through, I haven't actually got the pickup wound for these guitars yet, so that will all kind of come together as it's done. But what I need to do now is mark the slots in the nut, because without those the strings don't have anywhere to go, do they? So that's what we need. And I have a tendency to mix it up with what tool I actually mark them with. I think I'll use a pencil for now. In the past I have marked them, cut them with a small hacksaw. I've started them with a file, I've started them with a fret saw or a jeweler's saw. But I always mark them with a pencil first, and then depending on what size the slot is and what tool is to hand, that's when I'll start just gently cutting them so that they're there, and then the fine tuning, getting the actual depths right, will happen when I've got strings in place. Screwing things in place. Yeah, I've kind of got a confession to make. I don't strictly have to admit to this, because the joys of video editing and remote work and things means that you can kind of hide a lot, but I'm an honest person, so in the interests of full disclosure, I had planned to use a specific bridge for these guitars. There we go. Which was this wraparound. So the Goto 510 wraparound bridge, which would have sat roughly there-ish. You might be able to see the problem at the moment. And it would have been really cool. It would have kind of kept in with the junior vibes. As you can probably see, that's not sitting on the posts. Now, I was drilling the bridge holes and fitting the necks and things in the last days of my previous employer. I was using time in the building just as we were starting to realise things were going to pot, and so I was in a bit of a rush to get a couple of bits finished in the hope that I could actually use the spray shop there to get to this point, basically. Obviously, if you watch the last videos, you'll realise I didn't get to use the spray shop. so rushing was kind of unnecessary. But the rushing did mean that I'd kind of got my numbers muddled, because I was actually fitting necks and drilling, checking bridge holes for a batch of cream tea guitars, I think, at the time that I was doing these. Yeah, I was fitting the necks to cream tea guitars, and the ones I was doing were a Tune-o-matic and a stop-tail type. So I got my numbers muddled, and being in a rush, I didn't stop to check things. So it's entirely my fault, and a very good example of why you should always stop and check things rather than just ploughing ahead. But these posts are too close together. I think they're 74mm, something like that. Whereas for this, they should be 82.7 or something. The numbers are roughly there. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's been a couple of days since I discovered this and went on a bit of a meltdown and figured out how to fix it. However, it's not the end of the world. This bridge won't work, which is slightly annoying because the day before I figured it out, I ordered 2 of these bridges because I only had one, and they're 70 quid each. Really frustrating. However, that just means I've got to build another 3 guitars, so what are you going to do? Right. Luckily, the spacing and the post spacing that I'd done wasn't just a random number I picked out of the air, it was a number that was in my head. So I found, at great expense I might add, it's 100 quid per guitar to make this change. At trade price, it was really expensive. Still go to 510 series, they do Tune-o-matic and stop-tail, and as you can possibly see, that's sat on the posts perfectly. As I'm sure you can also see, there aren't any holes for this. I would have loved to find this out before I'd sprayed them, or at the very least before I'd wet sanded and buffed them up. But as it is, I may have to do some touch-ups. But I've got to drill 2 more holes, because I can have a bridge, but I need to attach the strings somehow. I'm really liking the design of these. They're a little bit more square and kind of modern looking than standard Tune-o-matic and stop-tail, which, coupled with kind of modern bevel and the 510 tunes, I think looks absolutely fantastic. So I'm not concerned looks wise. I'm slightly annoyed that I ballsed up, but I think that's more embarrassment of somebody who's supposed to know what they're doing it wrong. We all do it, we all make mistakes. If you don't own up to it and you say you never make mistakes, you're a liar. But it happens. So I need to figure out probably a little jig to locate the holes for these the same on all 3. And then I'm going to have the kind of terrifying moment of drilling them, which I might not talk whilst I do it, but I will record for you, as best I can at least. And then, once that's done, and I can install these, hopefully we should be able to continue with the assembly. I'm not sure how much of getting to this point on this particular guitar recorded, because when I looked at my camera it said the card was full. So you may have got bits of other guitars mixed in with the assembly up to this point. We'll see. But rest assured, this guitar is being fully assembled to test everything before I start on any of the others. And then we'll have montage video of all of the work being done. And there'll be 3 finished guitars at the end of it. Which will be nice. Probably remember to check these things first next time.